The hum of the jet engines filled the cabin as the boarding process for Flight 782 dragged on. Passengers shuffled down the aisle, wheeling their carry-ons, squeezing past one another, and searching for their assigned seats. First class was already buzzing with the usual mix. Businessmen tapping on laptops, a couple clinking champagne glasses, and attendants fluffing pillows. But when Jordan Miles stepped into cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Jordan was tall, mid-40s, dressed casually in dark jeans and a gray hoodie. He carried nothing but a slim leather backpack slung across one shoulder. His face was calm, his stride purposeful, but his clothing made him stand out in a sea of designer suits and luxury handbags. He paused at seat 3A, double-checking his boarding pass. His ticket was clear. First class, window seat 3A. He placed his bag overhead and sat down, leaning back with a contented sigh. For a moment, all was normal. Then the voice came. Sharp, dismissive, loud enough for the whole cabin to hear. "Excuse me, what you doing in my seat?" Jordan turned. A woman in her early 50s with platinum blonde hair and a perfect bob stood in the aisle. She wore a tailored navy suit, dripping pearls, and the air of someone who'd never been told no. Her name was Victoria Langley. Jordan lifted his boarding pass calmly. "Ma'am, this is 3A, my seat." Her lips curled into a smirk. "No, this is my seat. You probably misread your ticket. Coach is down there." She jabbed a manicured finger toward the back of the plane. Several passengers glanced up, sensing the tension. One man adjusted his earbuds, pretending not to listen. Another raised his phone slightly, recording discreetly. Jordan's tone remained even. "I'm in the right seat." Victoria's voice sharpened, dripping with venom. "Don't play games with me. You don't belong up here. First class is for people who earned it, not freeloaders." Gasps rippled. The word hung in the air like smoke. Jordan inhaled slowly, resisting the urge to snap back. He held up his ticket for her to see. 3A paid in full. But Victoria didn't even glance at it. She waved her hand dismissively, as if the paper were meaningless. "Fake. I've seen this before. People sneak in, thinking they can sit where they don't belong. You're holding up the flight. Get out." Jordan's jaw tightened. Still, he didn't move. A flight attendant hurried over, drawn by the raised voices. She was young, brunette, her name tag reading Erica. "Is there a problem here?" "Yes, there's a problem." Victoria snapped before Jordan could answer. "This man is in my seat. Clearly, he's confused, or worse, lying. Kindly escort him to his real seat." And coach. Jordan offered his pass again, this time to the attendant. "This is my seat." Erica scanned it, her brows furrowed. The name matched the manifest. The seat matched. But her eyes flicked between Victoria's expensive suit and Jordan's hoodie, and something in her hesitated. "Well," Erica started uncertain. "Let me double-check with the purser." Victoria smirked in triumph. "Do that. And while you're at it, maybe check if his car was even processed. People like him, well, you know." That line broke the room. A murmur rose. A man in row 2 muttered, "That's out of line." Another woman whispered, "She didn't just say that." Jordan sat straighter, his calm cracking, but he bit his tongue. Years of experience had taught him when to wait. The purser, Daniel, arrived. Older, authoritative, his presence commanding attention. Erica explained quickly. He took the pass, inspected it, then glanced at Jordan. His eyes narrowed slightly. Then he looked at Victoria. "Ma'am, your seat is actually 3B, right next to him." Victoria's face flushed. "Impossible. I always book the window. I never sit in the middle." Daniel's voice was firm. "Your ticket says 3B. He says 3A. He's in the correct seat." A collective hush fell. For a moment, it seemed resolved, but Victoria wasn't finished. Her voice dropped, but the venom was sharper. "Listen, I don't care what your little computer says. He doesn't belong here. Look at him. A hoodie? In first class? This is ridiculous. If you won't handle it, I'll call security myself." The words hung heavy. Jordan felt every eye on him. His dignity, his worth, his humanity, all questioned by a stranger's arrogance. His hands clenched on the armrest. For years, he'd dealt with whispers, double takes, subtle slights, but rarely something so naked, so public, and then the blow landed. Victoria, losing patience, leaned forward and snatched his boarding pass from his hand. She waved in the air like a trophy. Fraud. I knew it. Look at this. Cheap paper, fake print. Sir, you need to leave before I have you arrested. Jordan stood slowly. His frame loomed taller than Victoria expected, forcing her to step back instinctively. His voice, though low, carried through the cabin. This is harassment. You're out of line. Victoria sneered. Don't lecture me. I know people in this airline. One call, and you'll be off this plane in handcuffs. Phones were up now, half a dozen passengers recording. The buzz of whispers turned into a low roar. Daniel raised his hands, trying to calm both sides. All right, let's... But the captain's voice cut in over the intercom. Cabin crew, secure doors for departure. They weren't going anywhere until this ended. Jordan sank back into his seat, reclaiming his pass from Victoria's trembling hand. His calm returned, but behind his eyes was fire. He'd let her dig this hole. He'd let the cameras roll. Because when the truth came out, it wouldn't just bury her. It would bury everyone who sided with her. What would you have done if someone publicly humiliated you like this? Comment below, backhand index pointing down. And don't forget to subscribe. The cabin was thick with tension, even with the hum of the engines and the bustle of boarding in the back. The front of the plane felt frozen in one humiliating standoff. Jordan sat calmly, but every muscle in his body was tight, bracing for what would come next. Victoria, however, thrived in the spotlight. She adjusted her pearl necklace, glanced at the surrounding passengers, and raised her voice just enough to make sure everyone heard. This is outrageous. I've flown this airline for 20 years, and never once have I been forced to sit beside. She trailed off, her eyes cutting back toward Jordan, dripping with contempt. Someone who doesn't belong. Gasps fluttered through the cabin. A younger woman across the aisle whispered loudly, "She can't say that." While an older man in one seat muttered, "Just let the man sit down, for God's sake." But Victoria wasn't backing down. If anything, the murmurs fueled her performance. She waved over the purser, "Daniel, again, do you really expect me to sit here next to him while he takes my window seat? No, I demand you move him immediately, or I will escalate this." Daniel sighed, the weight of years of customer complaints etched in his furrowed brow. "Ma'am, I've already explained. His ticket is valid. Seat 3, A is. Victoria's voice cracked with manufactured outrage. "Then move him to another first-class seat. You can't possibly expect me to suffer like this. Not when I paid good money." Her words sliced through Jordan like a blade. Suffer? Sitting beside him was suffering? Jordan unclenched his fists. His instinct screamed to shout back, to call her out, to humiliate her in return. But something deep in his gut whispered, "Not yet. Let her dig deeper. Let them all show who they are." Erica, the younger attendant, leaned closer to Daniel. "There's a seat in row 4 still open. Maybe we can..." Daniel's hesitation was visible. Jordan caught it. So did the passengers record. The possibility hung in the air like poison. That despite being right, despite holding a valid ticket, he would be the one asked to move. Jordan's voice, calm but steady, broke the silence. "I'm not moving. This is my seat. I paid for it. End of story." Victoria scoffed loudly. "Listen to him. Entitled. This is exactly what I mean. People like him push their way into spaces they don't deserve, then play victim when called out." Jordan turned, locking eyes with her. His voice carried the weight of steel. "You've said enough." The words didn't just silence her. They silenced the cabin. For a brief, fragile moment, no one moved. Then a new voice cut through. "Sir," Erica said gently, though her tone lacked conviction, "maybe it would just be easier if you..." "Easier for who?" Jordan snapped, his patience thinning. "For her? For you? Or for every person on this plane watching you side with discrimination?" Every camera phone tilted higher, recording clearly. Passengers leaned in, hungry for resolution. Victoria, sensing she was losing the narrative, doubled down. She snatched at the armors between them, tugging it upward with unnecessary force. If he stays, I swear, I'll call security at the next gate. I'll tell them he threatened me. Then we'll see how long he keeps that seat. A chill went through Jordan's chest. That wasn't just arrogance anymore. That was a threat, a deliberate attempt to weaponize authority against him. And it worked. Daniel stepped back, rubbing his temple. He didn't want to deal with this. His eyes landed on Jordan. Sir, perhaps if you just... But before he could finish, a man in row 2 shot up. No, absolutely not. He was middle-aged in a suit, his phone in hand. I've been recording this entire thing. If you move him, if you side with her, this video will be online before we land. Do you really want that kind of publicity? The tension shattered into chaos. Murmurs turned to outright chatter. More phones raised. Even a passenger from economy peeked through the curtain, curious. Daniel raised both hands. Everyone, please, let's calm down. But Victoria's face burned crimson. She spun around to face the man in row 2. How dare you interfere? This has nothing to do with you. Delete that video immediately. He shook his head, defiant. Not a chance. Jordan's chest swelled with quiet, simmering pride. For once, someone was standing up beside him, but the fight wasn't over. Victoria turned back to Erica. You're going to regret this. When my husband hears about the way you've treated me, heads will roll. And as for him, she jabbed a finger at Jordan. I guarantee you he'll be off this plane before it lands. Her words dripped with confidence, as though she held untouchable power. And the crew, visibly rattled, looked torn between appeasing her and upholding policy. Jordan leaned back, crossing his arms. He'd seen this before. He'd lived this before. But this time, he was ready. Phones continued recording. The live tension felt almost theatrical, like the cabin itself had become a stage. Then, just as a final boarding call echoed to the intercom, another flight attendant appeared. Older, sterner, clearly a supervisor. Her badge read Marissa. What's the issue here? Victoria launched into a dramatic retelling, spinning herself as a victim. This man is in my seat. He's aggressive. He's disruptive. He's making me feel unsafe. Unsafe. That word struck like a dagger. Jordan sat motionless, his jaw tight, but his mind raced. Marissa glanced at him, then at the ticket still clutched in his hand. She scanned it, then checked the manifest on her tablet. Her eyes flickered, then lingered longer than expected. She looked up, her expression unreadable. The seat is his. Victoria froze. What did you just say? Marissa repeated it, louder this time. Seat 3A is assigned to Mr. Miles. He's in the right place. A cheer erupted, small but audible, from somewhere in row 4. The passengers who'd been recording smiled, exchanging knowing glances. But Victoria wasn't finished. Her smirk returned, sharper, colder. Fine. If he insists on staying here, then I'll make sure everyone in this cabin knows the truth about him. Do you even know who he is? She turned to passengers, voice dripping with venom. He's no millionaire. He's no businessman. He's just another. Her words cut off when Marissa's tone sliced like glass. That's enough, ma'am. But Victoria only smiled wider. Because what she didn't know, what no one in that cabin yet realized, was that Jordan Miles was about to reveal something that would not only end this argument, it would change the entire airline forever. Backhand index pointing right. Do you think Victoria's arrogance will finally backfire? Subscribe now and stay tuned, because the truth Jordan is about to reveal will shock the entire cabin. The cabin had become a powder keg. Every whispered word, every raised phone, every glance of outrage was fuel, and all it needed was one spark. Victoria sat stiffly in the aisle seat, chin high, lips curled in satisfaction, as if she had already won. To her, the entire cabin was her jury, and she was certain the verdict was about to come down in her favor. Jordan, however, sat calmly in 3A. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Years of patience, years of swallowing indignities, all condensed into the single moment. Marissa, the supervisor, had just told everyone that his seat was valid, but the cabin's energy was still tilted. People were still uncertain. Why did this woman act so confidently if she was wrong? Who was this man, really? And that's when Victoria struck again. I don't care what your manifest says. I know what I see. He doesn't belong here. He probably scraped enough pennies to buy this ticket on a discount. He's pretending. And you people are letting him get away with it. The words landed like blows. Phones captured every syllable. Gasps and murmurs spread. Some passengers shook their heads in disbelief. Others leaned forward, waiting. Jordan had been silent long enough. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into the front pocket of his hoodie. Every eye followed his hand. Even Victoria leaned back slightly, unsure. When his hand emerged, it wasn't clenched in anger. It held a wallet. Slim, black, elegant. He placed it calmly on the armrest, then flipped it open with his thumb. Inside gleamed a metallic card and an embossed badge, the kind few people in the world ever saw. He lifted his eyes, voice measured but carrying across the cabin. My name is Jordan Miles, and I don't just belong in this seat. I own this airline. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. It was as though the air had been sucked from the room. Passengers froze mid-breath. Erica's mouth fell open. Daniel, the purser, blinked rapidly, as if trying to process words that didn't fit reality. And Victoria? Her smirk shattered like glass. You what? She stammered. Jordan remained steady. I'm the founder and CEO of Skyjet International, the company whose name is printed on the outside of this aircraft, the company that pays your salaries, and the company that just watched you humiliate one of its executives in front of 200 witnesses. Phone shot higher, the quiet buzz turning into a roar of whispered disbelief. A young man in row 5 whispered loudly, "Oh my God, he owns the airline?" Victoria's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Jordan continued, his words slicing clean and sharp. I boarded quietly in casual clothes because I don't need to flaunt who I am. I've sat in these seats countless times, beside people who show me respect, who judge me by character and not appearance. But you? He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking with hers. You judged me before I even sat down. You insulted me. You threatened me. And you thought you could weaponize your privilege to get me thrown off my own plane. The cabin erupted, not in chaos, but in applause. Hands clapped, voices cheered. Passengers nodded vigorously, some even standing to applaud. The sound rolled through the cabin like thunder. Victoria shrank into her seat, her pearls trembling against her chest. Daniel, the purser, cleared his throat nervously. Mr. Miles, I had no idea. Jordan raised a hand. Save it. This isn't about you knowing who I am. It's about you knowing what's right. And you failed that test. The word stung. Erica, the young attendant, bit her lip, eyes glossy with shame. Marissa, though stoic, lowered her gaze. Victoria's voice finally cracked through the applause, high-pitched and desperate. This is absurd. You expect me to believe you own an airline? In a hoodie? You're lying. Jordan tilted his head. His calm expression didn't break, but his tone was colder now. Check the company website. Check the news. Or better yet, he pulled his phone from his pocket, swiping once before holding the glowing screen toward her. On it was a press photo. Jordan Miles in tailored suit, shaking hands with government officials, standing in front of a Skyjet aircraft. His face was unmistakable. The proof silenced the last holdouts of doubt. Passengers erupted again, this time louder, bolder. Phones are caught every second. One woman shouted, "This is going viral." Victoria's jaw trembled. Her confidence had collapsed into something else entirely. Fear. I didn't know, she whispered, shrinking back into her seat. Jordan leaned closer, voice low but firm, so only she and the recording phones could hear clearly. That's the problem. You didn't care to know. You saw my skin, my clothes, and you decided I didn't belong. You humiliated me in front of everyone. And now the whole world will see what you did. He leaned back, calm again. Enjoy your flight. The cabin broke into cheers again, louder than before. Some passengers clapped Jordan on the shoulder as they passed. Others shot daggers at Victoria, whose eyes darted around desperately for an ally and found none. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Jordan knew this was bigger than one woman's arrogance. Bigger than one humiliation. He had the power to turn this moment into something more, a reckoning not just for her, but for the airline, for the crew, for the system that allowed it. And when the plane landed, that reckoning would begin. Backhand index pointing right. Victoria thought she could get away with a simple apology. But Jordan was about to prove that justice doesn't stop at 30,000 feet. What do you think he should do next? Comment below, backhand index pointing down, and subscribe. The applause in the cabin eventually died down, but the tension lingered like static in the air. Phones were still raised, capturing every second. The cabin crew shifted uneasily, glancing at one another, unsure what came next. Victoria sat frozen in 3B, her pearl necklace rattling softly as her hands shook. Her voice was no longer sharp or commanding. It had become thin, trembling, and barely audible. I didn't know, she whispered again, but no one paid attention. Jordan leaned back in his seat. His calm returned, but there was steel in his eyes. He was no longer the underestimated passenger in a hoodie. He was the man in control. And everyone in that cabin knew it. The purser, Daniel, cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Miles, I want to apologize. If I'd known who you were." Jordan cut him off with a raised hand. His tone was calm but firm. "That's the problem, Daniel. It shouldn't matter who I am. I shouldn't need to flash a badge or pull up a press photo for you to do your job fairly. You saw a white woman accuse me, and your instinct was to believe her. That's not professionalism. That's bias. And in this company, that's unacceptable." Daniel's face paled. Erica, the younger attendant, shifted her weight uncomfortably, her lips pressed tight. Even Marissa, the supervisor, looked away. Jordan's voice carried through the cabin now, deliberate, each word sharp. "This airline has a code of conduct. Every employee is trained to de-escalate conflicts and treat passengers with dignity, regardless of their background. Yet in the last 15 minutes, I was insulted, threatened with removal, and nearly labeled a criminal because of how I look. If that's how you treat me, imagine how many others have suffered the same humiliation without the power to fight back." Phone zoomed in on his face as he spoke. The passengers knew they weren't just witnessing a confrontation. They were seeing a message that would ripple far beyond this cabin. Victoria tried to interject, her voice feeble. I mean... Jordan turned slowly to her. His gaze was piercing, but his tone remained calm. "You mean? You told me to get out of this seat. You called me a freeloader. You said I didn't belong. You tried to weaponize security against me. You meant every word until you realized who I was." Her lips quivered, but no words came. Jordan leaned back, folding his arms. "You humiliated me in front of this cabin. Now, you can sit with that shame for the rest of this flight. Because trust me, when we land, this won't end quietly." The murmurs in the cabin grew louder. Passengers whispered to one another, nodding in agreement. Some clapped softly again. Others muttered. Finally, someone saying it. Then, from the back of the cabin, a passenger spoke up, a young woman with curly hair. Her phone still raised. "Mr. Miles," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of excitement and outrage. "This is already online. The live stream. It's trending." Jordan blinked. Trending. She turned her phone toward him. The screen showed a TikTok live broadcast. Victoria screaming. Jordan calmly holding his boarding pass. As his identity was revealed, the view counter rolled upward at lightning speed. 500,000 views already, she whispered. Comments are exploding. Hashtag AirlineCEO is trending on Twitter. The ripple turned into a wave. Passengers gasped, phones buzzed with notifications, and screens lit up. What had begun as humiliation in one cabin was now playing out on millions of screens across the world. In real time. Victoria's face crumpled. Her hands shook violently now. "This can't be happening," she muttered. This can't. Jordan didn't even look at her. His focus turned to Marissa, the supervisor. When we land, he said firmly, I expect full incident reports from each of you, every word, every detail. And I'll expect names of any passengers who can corroborate. This isn't being swept under the rug. Marissa nodded quickly. Of course, Mr. Miles. And Jordan continued, his voice hardening. The disciplinary board will receive this footage immediately, including yours, Daniel, including yours, Erica. You don't escape accountability just because you froze. Daniel opened his mouth, but Jordan's sharp look silenced him. The cabin was quiet again, except for the constant ping of notifications as the story spread faster online. Victoria finally broke, leaning forward, her voice desperate. Please, I made a mistake. I was stressed, and I misread the situation. I'll apologize. I'll apologize to everyone here if I have to. She turned toward the nearest passengers, her voice cracking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. But the stares that met her were cold. The passengers had seen too much. The phones had captured too much. Jordan let her words hang in the air before responding. His voice was calm, but each syllable cut like ice. You don't get to erase what you said. Not with apologies. Not with excuses. The world has already seen who you are. The only question now is, what you would do to make it right? Victoria blinked, stunned. Make it right? Jordan nodded. When we land, you'll have a choice. You can walk away quietly and watch your face plastered across social media as a symbol of arrogance and racism in disguise. Or you can work with my team. Public apology, sensitivity training, community service, a chance to show growth. But you don't get to walk away unscathed. The cabin buzzed again, passengers whispering, phones capturing every word. This wasn't just about punishing her. It was about creating something bigger. Victoria sat frozen, her chest heaving. She had no witty retort left, no smug smile, only the crushing weight of accountability bearing down on her. Jordan turned back to the window, his calm restored. Outside, the sky stretched endlessly, blue and infinite. Inside, the balance of power had shifted entirely. The airline CEO had spoken, but this was only the beginning. Because when the wheels touched down, the real storm would begin, and not just for Victoria, but for the entire airline industry. Backhand index pointing right. Do you think Victoria deserved forgiveness, or should she face the full weight of justice? Comment below, backhand index pointing down, and subscribe. Because when this plane lands, the fallout will shake the entire company. The engines roared louder as the plane descended, the ground creeping closer to the small oval windows. For most passengers, landing was routine, but not this time. Not after what had unfolded at 30,000 feet. In the cabin, every phone was still out. The live stream had crossed 2 million views. Hashtags were trending worldwide. Hashtag airline CEO. Hashtag Skyjet scandal. Hashtag respecting the skies. Comments poured in faster than anyone could read. She really said that out loud? This man's composure is unreal. Finally, someone with power fighting back. Victoria sat rigid in 3B, hands folded tightly. Pearls pressed against her throat as though they could shield her from the storm outside. Every second closer to landing felt like the walls of her world closing in. Jordan, however, sat calmly in 3A, gazing out the window as the skyline of New York City came into view. His expression was serene, but behind his eyes was a quiet calculation. He wasn't thinking just about Victoria. He was thinking about every passenger who'd ever been humiliated like he had. Every story was swept under the rug. Every victim without a platform. The wheels screeched against the runway. The plane jolted, bounced, then steadied. A hush fell over the cabin. This wasn't the relief of arrival. This was anticipation. The intercom crackled. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to New York. Please remain seated as we taxi to the gate. But no one moved. Not really. Every eye was still locked on Jordan. Every camera was still pointed. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. As the seatbelt light blinked off, Jordan stood. His height commanded the cabin instantly. Conversations cut off. Phones zoomed in. He turned first to the crew. His voice carried authority, but not anger. "Marissa, Daniel, Erica, report to corporate headquarters tomorrow morning. HR will brief you on disciplinary proceedings. This company will not tolerate bias, conscious or unconscious, from anyone in uniform. You had a duty to de-escalate. Instead, you enabled humiliation. There will be consequences." The attendant's faces drained of color. Erica's lips quivered, but she nodded quickly, tears brimming in her eyes. Jordan's gaze shifted to Victoria. She flinched as though struck. "You humiliated me publicly. You tried to strip me of dignity in front of hundreds of witnesses. You didn't care about proof, policy, or respect. All you cared about was putting me in my place. Well, now it's your turn." Her voice cracked. "Please, I already apologized." Jordan's expression hardened. "Apologies mean nothing without accountability. You will issue a public statement on camera, taking responsibility for what you said. You will complete sensitivity training. You will serve 200 hours of community service with organizations dedicated to equity and inclusion. If you refuse, your name and face will become the face of the scandal. And I promise you, the internet won't forget." Gasps rippled. Phones recorded every word. Victoria's shoulders slumped. Her pearls trembled as her hands clutched them like lifelines. Finally, she whispered, "I'll do it." Jordan nodded once. "Good. Then maybe something positive can come from this ugliness." The cabin erupted in applause again, louder than ever. Not the polite claps from earlier, but thunderous, unified applause that shook the walls of the plane. Passengers stood, clapping, some even cheering. One man shouted, "That's leadership." Another woman called, "Respect." But Jordan wasn't done. He turned back to the crowd, his voice resonant. "This isn't just about me. This is about every person who's been told they don't belong. Every traveler who's been judged by their clothes, their skin, their accent. Every injustice was swept aside because they didn't have power. I had the platform to fight back. But most don't. That changes today." The phones captured his words like scripture. His voice carried the weight of millions who'd lived the same pain. "When I return to headquarters, Skyjet International will announce a $50 million initiative, anti-discrimination training for all employees, anonymous reporting channels for passengers, and a zero-tolerance policy for bias. This company will lead the industry in fairness and respect. And if other airlines want to compete, they'll need to follow." The applause roared louder. Passengers stood, cheering, some with tears in their eyes. For once, justice didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. Victoria bowed her head, humiliated. The crew exchanged nervous glances, the reality of their accountability sinking in. And Jordan? He stood tall, unshaken, as though the insults had never touched him. Not because they didn't hurt, but because he'd turned them into something greater. As passengers disembarked, many stopped to shake his hand. "Thank you," whispered a woman with her teenage son. "My boy will never forget this." "About time someone spoke up," said an older man. Clapped him on the back. Even those who had remained silent during the conflict now found the courage to speak out in its resolution. Outside the gate, reporters swarmed. The viral footage had spread so quickly that local news crews were already waiting for it. Cameras flashed, microphones pushed forward. "Mr. Miles, what happened on board? Do you plan to press charges against a passenger? What message do you have for the airline industry?" Jordan paused and spoke calmly, his words crisp and deliberate. "Respect costs nothing, but disrespect can destroy lives. Today, one person's prejudice was caught on camera, but for millions, this happens quietly every day. Let this be a reminder, never judge by appearance, because the person you look down on may just be the one holding you accountable." The quote hit headlines within the hour. By nightfall, every major network was playing the footage. Social media is inundated with clips, hashtags, and debates. And for once, the conversation wasn't about humiliation. It was about change. Victoria became a symbol, not a victory, but of arrogance brought low. The crew became cautionary tales. And Jordan? He became a hero, not because he was powerful, but because he used his power to demand respect for everyone. Weeks later, Skyjet's initiative rolled out. Employees retrained. Passengers empowered. Policies rewritten. The airline stock even climbed. Investors praising its bold stance. What began as an insult at 30,000 feet became a movement that changed the skies. And for Jordan Miles, it was never about revenge. It was about dignity. The story spread across the world, but its heart remained simple. Respect costs nothing. But disrespect? Disrespect can cost you everything. What did you think of Jordan's response? Should Victoria have been punished more severely, or was accountability sufficient? Comment below, backhand index pointing down. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful struggle stories.